Well, this week's been certainly going by relatively quickly. I mean, I'm happy for a week ending faster. I mean, it's already Thursday. Which also reminds me, happy Thursday, everybody. Okay, so. But, man, sometimes you just notice how fast a week goes. But, who knows? Maybe I probably just jinxed it. Now it's going to move slower than molasses in January. Anyway. So, yeah, today is Thursday. And after the travesty of the fact that there was not a new episode of Hot Ones, we are going to get a new episode today. Thank goodness. I miss a show about chicken wings, which is the hors d'oeuvre of my full course menu. You bet I'm always interested in seeing it. So, funny that I talk about an item on my full course menu when I just did that not even a couple of days ago. Actually, yeah. It was not even a couple of days ago. It was just a couple of days ago. Anyway. So, let's see. I know I said I wouldn't do another TP tale for a while. But honestly, this one just sort of popped in my head. And this is actually one that a lot of people that a lot of you guys really would like to hear. And it's actually something that a lot of my brothers held near and dear. And that is the pond in which we played. Well, should get one thing out of the way. Behind the, on the very back of the campus, behind an area called Star Hill, there was a pond. A very, relatively small pond. We had fish and snapping turtles and all sorts of related wildlife that you would occasionally see. It was 100% perfectly swimmable in. I don't know, because I myself have swam in it before. Yeah. In fact, I'll never forget the day it happened. And it's actually a day that's very near and dear to my heart. It was, let's see, I arrived at Trinity-Pawling on a Tuesday. This was the Sunday after I arrived. And when I first arrived at Trinity-Pawling, there started being 2-a-day sessions for not just football, but for all sports involved, including cross country, which is what I did. And, I didn't arrive until the afternoon. I didn't know about 2-a-days. So, and I had played football at Horsehead, so I know what 2-a-day sessions are. I know that in spades, actually. Especially since by the time I graduated high school, I was able to do 2-a-days like nothing. Like nobody's business. Anyway. So, and I had actually done quite a bit of training, and in terms of being a lineman at Horseheads, I was easily like the most in shape that Horseheads had at the time. By the time I graduated Horseheads, I was able to run a sub 6-minute mile. There aren't really many linemen at Horseheads at the time none of them could get sub 8. They were all that out of shape. So, yeah, I was definitely on the more prepared side. But the first Sunday I was at Trinity-Pawling, we actually had our first actual race. Not against another school, against each other. This was basically to almost completely determine who was going to be varsity and who was going to be on JV, essentially. And keep in mind, this was before 2 of the brothers who I've mentioned in the past, who are no longer are with us, arrived. So, let me just put into perspective what ended up happening. There were these 2 guys I was running behind. One of them actually wasn't very good. In fact, he actually ended up getting booted out because he had drugs on campus. Funny enough, his father was a DEA. I think that's what it is. This is one of those federal drug-related type people that, you'll get in trouble if you do drugs or whatever. The point is, it was this kid and a sophomore who actually was a really good friend of mine. And I was just behind them the entire race, and for the life of me, I just couldn't catch them and pass them. I ended up being 8th overall, and varsity is pretty much top 7. I was disappointed, but our cross-country coaches at the time actually were a little more merciful and realized that there really wasn't that much difference apart from everyone else in that upper area, so I ended up being on varsity anyway. In fact, by the end of the year, I was in the top 7. But at the time, after we did the race was actually around Trinity-Pawling's old course, in case any of you guys are wondering. I was just feeling devastated. And to make matters worse, my parents actually came up to visit, and not to see me race, but to see me off before the actual school year starts, you see. And so when the race was over, they saw me finishing. I tried. If you had seen what my kick was at the very end of that race, a lot of my fellow runners, you'd be proud. You'd be very proud. And again, even though I made top 8, I still felt really devastated. And the itinerary for everyone at Trinity-Pawling later that evening, after their parents left, everyone said goodbyes, there was going to be a giant cookout and whatever. And I felt a little bit better being surrounded by my brothers and whatever. But what really made me feel better is a bunch of us ended up going, not a bunch, it was more like maybe a dozen, somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen and a half. Not that many people. But we all went into the pond. And some of the people that were there included one of my teammates from cross country who was a really, really, really good squash player, and he was only a sophomore at the time. In fact, he was actually the 3rd friend I ever made at Trinity-Pawling, because when you do cross country, there you have the obligatory 3,000 meter run or whatever. After that 3,000 meter run, the next morning after I arrived at Trinity-Pawling, this squash player, this cross country runner, who was also a really good squash player, walks up and says, "Man, you're really good." He didn't actually say those words specifically, but it was akin to that. Basically, he acknowledged my skills, if you will. It rhymes. Anyway, so he was there. The writer, director, producer, and star of the McDonald's Mafia, he was there. In fact, I do believe he told me he was going to try and audition for being on Survivor. He definitely had the skills for it. That's for sure. And there were more of us, but for the life of me, I can't remember. If any of you guys were there and I missed you, I'm so sorry. But it was a real pick-me-up. The water felt great. And honestly, if I needed to feel better, in fact, I'm just going to say right now, that was the first time I ever truly felt that my brothers had my back. Even though technically it really wasn't very grand at the time, but let's just say something did happen along the line which was on a much grander scale. But I'll get to that at a later date. In fact, it'll be just about 5 months from now. Anyway. And swimming in the pond isn't the only thing he did. I mean, as you Game of Thrones fans love to say, winter's coming. And it came. The pond froze, and you can ice skate on it. I never really was big into ice skating, so I never really did it myself. But believe it or not, when the pond got frozen enough, there was actually a hockey tournament. Yeah, teams got together to play hockey. I mean, I said before, if football was the big sport of choice during the fall, and actually, and lacrosse was the big sport to do in spring, and this is a Trinity-Pawling, by the way. So yeah, football was in the fall, lacrosse was in the spring. Easily the big sport of choice was legitimately either hockey or wrestling, even though, I wrestled, and even the headmaster at the time said wrestling is his sport of choice for the winter. Hockey was easily the biggest thing we did at Trinity-Pawling during the winter time. And it really showed, because even if you didn't play hockey and you still want to be involved in this hockey tournament that took place on a frozen pond, you wanted to do it, for sure. And that's exactly what ended up happening. So, yeah, a lot of good times. Although if I ever go to Trinity-Pawling, you know what, that does remind me, if I ever go back to Trinity-Pawling, one of the things I'm definitely going to show you guys, actually with my kid, I'm going to show you the entire campus. So yeah, look forward to that video, because you guys are definitely seeing the pond in which we played. Yes. It was so awesome that the pond was so awesome that I just sang part of the lyrics of our Alma Mater song from Trinity-Pawling. Yes, pond in which we played is among those lyrics. That's how special it is. But yeah, and there was other stuff you could do with the pond too. I mean, you could fish at the pond. In fact, I took one of the classes I took at Trinity-Pawling was environmental studies. So there was quite a few pond-related experiments that we did. Although, outside of what I call the Asian Trilogy class, which I'll touch upon at another time, it was filled with a particular student that I don't really care for. The one I mentioned who scares the living daylights out of me. But I'll get to that also at a later date. But that's a later date. And we got to get through today so we can get to Friday and therefore the weekend. And there's something special I'm going to try and work on for this weekend. So try and look forward to that. Anyway, like, favorite, share, and hit that subscribe button. I can seriously use the support on YouTube. I'm humbled I made this video for all of you guys to watch and enjoy today. I'm hopeful you all have a wonderful Thursday. And remember, if any of you guys ever want to talk or chat, I'm always going to be here to lend an ear. And I'm always going to have your back. So take care. And you know what? As long as I'm talking about ponds and water and such, let's enjoy this nice weather we have. Because before we know, we're going to be complaining about how cold it is again later. Take care, everybody.